Whenever you're done.
I figured it's better if
Well, if he's going to do that, I'm going to breathe.
Pierce been holding his breath the whole time, and now he has
The
to
longer
breathe.
this takes, the longer it takes me to get the editing started.
Don't fart.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Three Guys in a Pie podcast. I'm your host Jonathan, here with my co-host Gary.
I've been told I can't breathe.
And back with us again, Aaron.
I forgot what to say.
And we have another special guest, Lewis. Back with us once again.
Oh my god.
Right? What a fascist. He keeps telling us not to breathe.
So I think I wanted to touch back on some older topics that we went over now that we have Lou on, and we talk about specifically automation is what I want to up because I had a oh shit moment at work the other day.
Oh boy, I can't wait to hear this one.
So before we get started, since we're doing an episode kind of like looking back, I just wanted to, plug the Facebook and the Twitter as a way of like reaching out and letting us know what you guys want to hear. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We also do release the episodes on a video format.
You can't see our faces, though.
Yeah, well, that's probably for the better, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, have you looked at you recently? Yikes.
You can post your comments there, and we can, get connected with everybody. But this week, I wanted to bring up automation.
The factory must grow.
And like Aaron and I work in the same field. I'm a civil engineer. Well, not actually, but due to circumstances, I found myself in this position. And my one friend that I work with was showing me this cool new drone we got. And he's been talking about this for a while, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that'll put like surveyors out of work. Like, I could see that. Maybe like just a small number of, like, it's not going to be a big deal. And he showed me, they finally went out and got information from this drone. And I feel bad for anybody who's going to college to be a surveyor right now.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's surprising that it hasn't happened, like, sooner, because the other day while I was working, I was driving down one of the major highways in our area, and no shit, there was this surveyor on the other side of the highway, standing in the middle of two lanes.
Yep.
To get this information, and I'm like, this is one of the most traffic-heavy times of day, on one of the most popular highways in our area, and you're fucking standing in the middle of two lanes? That job better pay fucking damn good.
And it generally doesn't pay that well. If you're a registered surveyor and you have your license and stuff, it pays better. But what would take our crew of about 12 to 15 people 2 weeks to do took them 36 minutes.
No shit.
Yep.
Really?
Double the accuracy. They're accurate within 0.2 of an inch, whereas a manual survey, you're only accurate within 0.4 of an inch.
Oh, I'd like to calibrate that. I don't believe that.
So, okay.
Well, they got control points, and they were, their farthest they were off was a centimeter in any direction.
Wow.
From their control points.
So, I guess this is just me kind of being an oldish fuddy-duddy. So, how is the drone more accurate than human surveyors? Because I have to imagine there's some places that a drone can't necessarily get, like in heavily wooded areas when you're trying to survey.
So
is it actually better for it?
They can actually penetrate canopy cover.
No shit.
So they can differentiate trees from what's underneath. I think like incredibly densely, maybe it wouldn't be able to, but I think you could get around that by flying under the canopy cover if it's clear enough underneath. But like if it's clear enough for surveyors to get to, it's probably clear enough to fly the drone. And like in an area where like the surveyors would get maybe 200 or 300 points, this thing gets like 200,000 or 300,000 points.
Jesus Christ.
And I was looking at the information that this thing spits out.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like someone just took a picture. That's how many points there are. And I was realizing that with AI, half of my job is taking those points the surveyors get and drawing things with them.
Oh.
And like this is getting such high definition with so many points that I can totally see like as-built drawings just being done by automation. You just have the drone fly out there, get the information, and a program just compiles it into a drawing. And like I'm really in the mindset like any job you do on a computer and any job that's incredibly systematic is incredibly easy to automate. And that is exactly what my job falls into. And I looked at this and I'm like, I might be out of work in 10 years.
See, I take a different opinion, though, than you on this from where I come from and from what I've seen, because when you're telling, like, I don't know the specifics of what the data that it's taking in is, but, I mean, it sounds to me like it's going to start, when you start automating your job, for example, it's going to start directly competing with your auxiliary programs that you use, which in and of itself are their own companies. Which, I mean, it's one thing I wanted to get into is, like, I do think automation is not necessarily insulated from the politics of other companies like programmers. Like, what do you do your drawings on right now? Probably
AutoCAD.
AutoCAD, yeah. I know there's a couple of other ways. That's the primary.
That's the only one I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
It's the most popular one, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't speak for that.
'Cause I
It's
know
the one
that's-
everybody I know uses.
Yeah, because I know I
Same.
used AutoCAD in high school even, years ago.
I think there's Revit is another one, but that's the only other one I can think of.
I think it's like so ubiquitous between engineers and people who do any types of mechanical drawings or architectural drawings. But I mean, there's other programs that are probably like built off of that are more specialized for an individual field, but everybody learns off AutoCAD.
So normally I'd say I'm perfectly safe because my job can't be automated, right? I mow grass for a living. I shit you not. On Thursday, we were driving to go to a property. And didn't we see this stupid little fucking Roomba bot that is built to mow lawns going up and down someone's yard?
So I was hoping you would be like, my job's impervious, because I had actually just recently considered investing in a company that they essentially have a landscaper robot. It can cut grass, it can trim edges, it can trim hedges, it can do pretty much anything a human can.
Oh yeah.
And it's like the size of an actual lawnmower. I'm like,
yeah.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah. I'm not safe from the automation. Like fucking the factory must grow is not a lie. It's happening.
Yeah.
Like, but the problem is with those robots is you start running into a lot of like, I'm still waiting on the unfortunate story of a child loses hand to automated lawnmower equipment.
I think that, like, at least the one I was looking at is like they shut down if anybody comes within a certain distance.
Yeah, and
it's
they
like
should.
some absurd distance.
Yeah. So everything is still, at least on the consumer end, everything is still really basic right now. The way that it works, at least for the models I've looked at, because I thought about, because you had said you were thinking about getting it for here.
Like one of the really small ones.
Yeah. And for here, you could probably get away with it. But the thing is, you basically have to put in a dog fence for the robot.
Yeah.
Because the way it runs is it runs like a Roomba, but instead of it being in a house and it hits a wall and then it turns around and goes in a different direction until it hits a wall and it covers the entire area, it goes until it senses the electric and then it turns around and cuts.
I think some of them actually run by GPS too, though.
Which is probably a better way to do it if you can map out your property and then tell it how you want it to cut.
Yeah.
Like it's programmable, that would be way better.
I'd argue against that. GPS technology, while, accurate overall, I mean, there's a certain level of drift in GPS.
Oh,
when
yeah.
you need precision for, like, mowing a lawn.
Well, GPS is what we use for surveying. As is right now.
Well,
That's why the LIDAR is more accurate than the GPS.
see, now LIDAR, that's something I see coming into play in even in my industry. LIDAR is going to be...
Yeah, that's essentially,
part of
it's a giant LIDAR unit mounted on a drone.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I actually know specifically the technology you're talking about, because I just watched this on TV. I have no professional experience with this part, but I like to watch Josh Gates. He does that show where he'll go out and look for cryptids or fucking ancient civilizations, random bullshit.
Mothman! Mothman!
He never finds anything, but they he does sometimes, but nothing like super cool. And one of the episodes that they did find something, they were looking for basically ruins in South America amongst really heavy jungle forest cover, and they used a drone with LiDAR. And I get what you mean by it takes a bunch of different points and it looks like a picture, because it did look like a picture. I mean, you're bouncing those points off hundreds of thousands to millions of times. The machine was incredible because it could penetrate canopy cover with the lasers. They use it to basically get a topographical map of the area, and then from that map, they could also infer areas that using like, I guess, geological data, like what areas were most likely to have a structure underneath the ground. So like they don't even need to see it with the LIDAR in order to figure it out. It was really cool. Like it was really interesting from a science perspective on what was not typically like a super hardcore science show, which is, you know, kind of a guilty pleasure of mine.
You mean cryptids aren't real science?
Which reminds me, after this episode, remind me to tell you about the conspiracy theory between Teddy Roosevelt, the national parks, and the Wendigo.
Oh, okay.
That'll be an interesting one.
Sounds like we need to have my friend Chris on because he had mentioned being a guest and that he has a podcast that's all about cryptids.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
That would be interesting because I don't know a lot about cryptids and I would like to learn more.
I know so much about cryptids.
So-
I am so into it.
So, getting back to the automation, the main difference between what you were saying to automate landscaping and for people like me, it's going to come down to how much does the product cost versus like a paid service like mine, and how fast is it? Can it go as fast as me?
Yeah, and a lot of what it was marketing, a lot of what they were I know as far as price goes, they do like a lease program for the software. You buy the machine and you lease the software for it.
So you're paying for,
You're paying for labor kind of with it still.
Okay. With
but
an
it's
upfront-
like $1,500 a month, where I would imagine that's way cheaper than it would cost to run.
$1,500 a month.
So
I could be wrong on the exact number.
my take on that is all you would need is a landscaping company like yours to purchase and use one of these units and then use that to cut other people's lawn rather than have individual homeowners.
Yeah, that's what it's for. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is it's meant for companies like yours where you would buy that. So instead of you having to ride the lawnmower, you would show up to a property, have that start going, and you would do everything else. And then by the time you're done doing your stuff, it'd be done cutting the grass, you'd load it up and move to the next property.
You gotta send me a link to this. My dad would be interested. I shit you not. He's been joking for like 2 years now. He's like, I wish I could just send the mowers out and they would be like RCs where I would sit in my house and control it, cut everything, and then load it back up and then drive the truck. Either automated or like with someone in it.
Self-driving cars.
Yeah.
Which is a whole nother thing. But like, I think when we talk a lot about automation, it's not necessarily like, I don't see every civil engineer being replaced, but I see like our company severely downsizing. Like I could totally see, because we'll still need surveyors to do some things, but I could see us downsizing the crew by 3/4 and cutting half of our engineers out in the next 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, the vast majority of what I do is tedious and like there's no thinking to it pretty much. So like
Mr. Tree Counter.
It's very like what we do is very structured. There's literal PDFs that we have to like just documents upon documents of how things have to be done
as per SOP. SOP.
Like I could totally see someone having an AI just be able to read through these things, figure out how to design a plan, and just boom. It would probably still even happen in AutoCAD, so that would kind of like even alleviate.
Just have it like scan a drawing and be like, here's the areas of everything of interest. Like I don't have to do my area calculations and things.
And automation like really scares me because like I feel like I'm safer on this end than you guys are for at least a little while. Like I don't know. Like Lou, I'm sorry. I think still have no
I don't.
I mean, at the risk of doxing myself, I'll expand on it because my field is so small in the area I'm in. But before I get there, I will say I disagree with you, actually. I think you are way more at risk than these two are.
Correct.
Really?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. So my background right now is primarily manufacturing. I'm in the metrology field, so a lot of calibration, validation of equipment. And when it comes to like a large-scale production, like manufacturing or anything like science-based. If something's going to go into a human body, for example, every little thing has to be qualified. It has to be verified that it works within the parameters that they say. It's not good enough that the manufacturer of the piece of equipment or the software will say, hey, this works, because we need to verify that it will work in our lab, in our process before it can be used. And there's a gigantic sunk cost for that. A lot of man hours of somebody testing something over and over and over again. So when I hear everybody's going to automation, I get giddy because that means my field is going to explode, because you have all this equipment, and if it's going to be used on very important tasks, it needs to have somebody there that's saying it's operating, when you set it up, it's operating within the qualifications that the manufacturer says it is, and then you need somebody to maintain it. Because every machine, actually, realistically, every tool over time will drift to a degree. Whether it's like enough that it's going to matter past its lifespan, that depends on the piece of equipment. But, you use a torque wrench enough, and you'll need to get it calibrated because eventually it will not be accurate, even though it's a simple piece of equipment like a torque wrench. So when it comes to smaller scale stuff, like just a sophisticated,
where it's less precision.
Yeah, you don't need to get a piece of equipment qualified before you can like use it to cut your lawn. That's a little bit scary to me if I was in that position, because realistically, if it's working right now, the only thing that they need to prove to the government regulators, which I do not have a very high opinion of, both personally and professionally, is that it's safe to use. So, I mean, once it's been cleared that it's safe to use, there is no qualification, there's no calibration. Like, it's either cutting the lawn or it's not cutting the lawn.
Yeah, and I understand your point, but I think when we're talking about this, I feel like there's less people trying to really put out this mind the pun, cutting edge technology of lawn care, because it's such a simple job where automating it feels like a waste of time in a sense. At least to me, that's a personal thing.
Anywhere you can get rid of human man hours is usually incredibly lucrative to do, unless it's a job that can be done with illegal labor and they don't have to pay actual labor prices, because like in the US, labor prices are going up. So like your job is incredibly man hour intensive.
Yeah, but that's the thing too. You're talking about a field where illegal labor is like 75% of the field, whether it be through people who are here illegally and looking for jobs, or just people who don't want to be documented as having a working job. I run into a lot of drug addicts who have a lot of, things going on in their court life that they're like, yeah, if I'm documented making money, they're going to take like a cut of my payout to pay like my court fees. And like, I don't want that. So can you pay me cash?
Larger companies are much less willing to take those kind of risks.
Yeah.
Whereas they have the capital to invest in that kind of technology. Yeah. And then it's not that your dad's going to buy one of these and put you out of work. It's that these large companies are going to start coming into your territory and pushing you guys out. Is like the biggest thing it's not, your job isn't directly going to be automated by your employer. It's your job's going to be automated by someone else.
Yeah. And the whole thing is there's been a huge increase in landscapers within the last 5 years. I particularly saw it last year during COVID, because when everyone was out of work, we saw a lot of people that were going, oh, hey, I'm out of a job right now because I took a voluntary layoff because of COVID, but I got a truck, I got a mower, and I got a trailer, and I know people who need their lawns cut. So we saw so many people last year like taking a Jeep, a shitty like one-axle trailer, and a fucking Cub Cadet riding mower around, and they were like, hey, for $20 we'll mow your grass, it'll take us 3 hours, but hey, we had to be careful. They don't care how much they're getting paid for a property. They're just happy they're getting paid at all. And they're cutting it, and they're not cutting it well. But a lot of our clients, they don't care if it's cut well. They just care if it's cut and if it's cut cheap.
Yeah, I just need my grass cut.
And those people directly were undermining us.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's a very real thing where I can see eventually if a big company would come in and be like, hey, you're paying these people, like, $40 a cut, we can do it for 10. Like, then it's just like, well, there's no way in hell we can beat that.
I argue there is. It's by cracking down on the illegal labor by political lobbying, which is exactly where they would go.
No, I wasn't talking about. I was talking about the automation.
No, that's what I'm saying is. So the automators will ultimately win because they hold the largest amount of capital. So if you were to try and outcompete them by basically lowering your overhead to the point where you're just some random guy who's just mowing lawns for like $5, like,
yeah, we could never make that work.
Yeah,
ever.
They could either wait you out until inevitably because your business model doesn't work, or B, if you're like getting around that through illegal methods by illegal labor or what have you, they'll just lobby against you.
Well, and there's something to be said though too. with the machine that you looked at for this automated landscaping, whatever, when they were there any like test videos?
Yeah, they actually are actively using it on a lot of large golf courses right now, and they have contracts with golf courses and a couple like property management companies.
Okay, so here's the thing about golf courses. Golf courses are usually relatively flat, and they're usually relatively easy to cut.
Yeah.
I cut a lot of sketchy shit, like a lot,
and
sheer hills and things like that, and we charge a premium for that. Now, can your machine do that?
I think it could probably do it better because it has much lower center of gravity because this thing's like 2 feet off the ground. So like from what they were saying is like hills are barely even a challenge for it because it's just doesn't have to worry about tipping and like it just goes.
See, that's interesting though because a lot of the thing when you cut a hill, a lot of that is operator experience because even if you have like a low center of gravity, shit can go wrong on that hill. Like if it is slightly wet. That changes how you have to mow that hill because it's so easy to like fuck it up and now, okay, I'm 3/4 of the way down the hill. I was going straight. Now I'm not anymore.
Well, I think they were actually having it just mow up the hill and down the hill.
Yeah, well, that's something that you can do. Like, you do that for hills where you shouldn't be mowing it in the first place. But if you want to, you can do that. Like the big piece of equipment that you saw that we have, that thing can mow a 26-degree grade. Anything more than that, they don't recommend you do it, but you can.
Yeah. I'll send you the stuff and you can take a look at it. I'll try to find it again. But as far as you, Lou, do you think you're fit? Because it sounds like what you were saying is you have a very repetitive, very structured job.
Oh, I mean, that's kind of my specific job right now, so hopefully I don't get doxxed. We're going to find out just how crazy stuff is going on over there. But, so my field is metrology. It's, I spent a lot of time as a calibration technician, so a lot of what I would do is I'd walk up to a piece of equipment. I have what we call in the industry a standard. Let's say I was going to go and calibrate a balance or a scale. So you guys know what a scale is, right? For everybody out there, a scale is it's got a digital display and a weight cell on it, and you basically just go up and, like a scale of a supermarket, like how much does this pound of grapes actually weigh? Is it really a pound? If you're getting, if you have to pay by pound, you'd want to know as accurately as you can how much you want to pay for this. So I would go up with a weight standard. So, for example, it would be like a stainless steel weight that I know is exactly 1 kilogram, for example. We use the metric system, by the way.
As you should. As you should.
So no pounds, unless the display makes us, and then we convert. But anyway, so I will throw my 1 kilogram weight on there, and let's say it reads 1.1 kilograms. It fails. Probably, if it's off by 0.1 for a scale, but
yeah, because that's pretty egregious.
Well, yeah, it really you would set your pass-fail criteria by how accurate do you need your piece of equipment. If it's just like I just want to throw stuff on this and see if it reads, who cares? Just adjust it so that it's back in. But if it's like if you're weighing gold, probably don't want it to be very inaccurate because
or chemicals in a lab.
Yeah, I digress.
That's just all right.
Anyway,
sure, bud.
So from there, we will calibrate it. So usually all these machines will have a calibration adjustment. Unless they don't, sometimes they won't have an adjustment, like a button to adjust it, in which case you'll have to figure out what to do there. And from there, you would just adjust it to be as close to your standard. And then your standard is basically just a piece of equipment that has been tested down the line by, it's an organization called NIST. You guys might be familiar with it.
Yeah.
It's a NIST standard. So like for weights, each weight is going to be calibrated by another standard that's more accurate than that one, all the way up to the international standard that the NIST will use, whether they house it or if it's like just a law of nature.
Well, yeah, because recently we're switching to the two constants where they're trying to fix Avogadro's number and E, weren't they?
Maybe. I'm not that high up on it, but
okay.
But it's possible.
Avogadro's number, that's the number of molecules in a mole of substance, isn't it?
Yes, and they actually have recently adjusted it.
Really?
Yeah, to be accurate. So they're using those two fundamental numbers to calibrate things.
So it's not like 6.203 E.
It still is. They changed the back like 15th decimal place or something.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's
Because
there's something.
So
It's like some sphere of silicone that like they're able to calculate the number of molecules in it, and it weighs a certain amount, and that's what they use to standardize it. But that's besides the point.
Yeah, but you can see how what I was getting at with this is, so when you calibrate something, you're trying to make something more accurate, and every machine drifts over time. So for something like, a automatic lawnmower, nobody really gives a shit. But let's say
You'd be surprised. I've had some really fucking picky customers, dude.
Well, let's say we're using it's a TCAN machine, which is an automatic pipetter. It's it has like a headpiece, and
those things are so fucking cool.
Drop down, aspirate the liquid, and then dispense it accurately into like a 96 well channel. So I mean, if you're off by a millimeter, then that you have a problem because they're not going in the wells. So they're getting sprayed all over the machinery. So, accuracy, and that's where I get into accuracy and qualifications being important on these extremely regulated markets. And that really would probably open my field up a lot, because unless you have a piece of equipment that calibrates, like a automated calibrator of a bunch of equipment.
Well, that's what I was trying to get at. Do you think something like that is possible, or do you know?
Kind of. It's funny because it would happen in a way. So for a lot of balances, they actually already have an auto calibration feature, right? And from my anecdotal experience, when they have that, they are dead on balls accurate after they auto calibrate. I don't need to throw anything on there. I press the auto calibrate button and it's good to go. Does it work every single time? No, but pretty much every time I would be fine to just, if I had a balance at home, press the auto calibrate button and not use a standard. Definitely.
Because we've definitely had we've had some pretty really fucking expensive balances when I was doing lab work. Mm-hmm. And it was like a death knell if you press the auto calibrate, because then the whole fucking thing was fucked up.
Yeah. So so here's what I tell people at work who don't understand, because a lot of people at our work don't understand this, which is, it's funny I'm talking about it on a podcast, but let's say you use a piece of equipment to measure, we'll say you use like a pipetter for 6 months, and you're pipetting chemicals which ultimately go to a product which go into somebody's system, right? Like let's say you're battling cancer or something, right? You go to use it, and it's out. It's not within tolerance. Let's say it's wildly off. It's wildly inaccurate. If they had a little auto calibrate button, you just press it and keep on going. But you still don't know how it operated within that last 6 months. And it could be so inaccurate that it could be what you're putting in somebody's body is now effectively poison because of the amount of chemical you put in there. So I feel pretty safe because you're always going to need somebody to go there and say, hey, I looked at it. This is your data on your as found. I changed it, and now this is what it's looking like. Over the last 6 months you use this piece of equipment, it's been this far out, So, I mean, there's always going to be a business case for that on these really highly regulated industries because it's just such an industry standard at this point. If you don't have that happening, you're not running.
So it'll probably be similar to ours from what it sounds like. It's like you'll probably see a downsize in the field.
I don't think
so. As long as it's not, well, I guess you're saying you could be counterbalanced by all these other things that need to be.
Because more equipment is going to need to be calibrated more frequently. So his field will actually get bigger.
By a large degree. I think you'll see maybe some of these smaller companies will have less field technicians, which would be like the part of my field that would downsize. But from in-house calibrators and third parties, like if I'm going to look at something and adjust it, number one, if you had a field service technician from like your OEM come out and look at it, then they're going to charge you a lot of money. So I just think there's always going to be a need for that because there is no... Unless these companies are developing their own NIST traceable standards, like these standards that I'm talking about standards that trace back to for time all the way back to the atomic clock, unless they develop their own, which is extremely impractical and it just doesn't make, financial sense. Like there's always going to be room for my field and it's probably going to grow from this, which is kind of selfish to say, but
Do you have openings?
Actually, I know of one coming up pretty soon. When's this gonna air?
Next week.
Sorry, boss. It's funny. My position is somewhere in between, I would say, like your standard electrician and an advanced engineer. Somewhere in the middle, in that gray area. But that's it. Kind of what I wanted to talk to wasn't necessarily about how it affects me in my field, but more of how you're going to see a shift. I think where sure maybe there's going to be less people mowing lawns, but there's going to be a lot more people fixing broken automated lawnmowers.
and that's the one thing where it's kind of a double-edged sword, because it's like I'm pretty much a grease monkey. If something breaks on a piece of equipment or in the work truck, I can go and I can find a way to fix it, whether I fix it correctly or not, whether the fix is going to last or if it's going to get me through the day, I can do it. The problem is when you start running into automated equipment where it is something like calibrated, when you start trying to fix that shit, you're either going to void the warranty, you're going to break it, or you're going to fix it, nothing bad's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you can take that chance, but it's like, without going and figuring out how to do it, like that's going to be really the key factor. And honestly, if we go within the next 10 to 20 years, 30 years, if we start seeing this massive shift to like automated lawnmowers, almost every landscaping company is going to become a lawn care company. Now there's a difference. The landscaping companies will come and mow your grass, and they'll do whatever piddly bullshit projects you have them to do, like laying stone, throwing mulch, whatever.
Well, like that stuff you'll still have to do for a while.
Yeah, and you can make a ton of money on that. So you'll either see them go to doing more projects like that, doing hardscaping, which is like putting in paver patios and things like that. But what is going to be, I think, the more profitable is where people go and they do lawn applications, where they go out. I've been really railing on Jonathan to let me do lawn applications for him. But, like, you go out, you fertilize, and you spray chemical to kill the weeds, and you do spot weed checks. You can't automate that. You probably could further down the line, but with the chemicals that you're working with, bad shit can happen where it's kind of like the micropipetter, where it's like, so your piece of equipment was, using too much of this chemical. Oh, hey, you just killed everyone's grass.
Yeah, and like for that, I think we could probably make machines that could do it. I think people would have too many safety concerns.
Well, the problem is
let it happen.
To be cost effective.
Go out
and have to have so
that,
many regulations on it.
Yeah, and to go out and do that anyway, you have to become a licensed applicator.
Yeah.
So there's classes you have to go through, and by the end of it, you have your license. And it pays. Oh boy, does it pay. It's good money. In half an hour, my dad made like $500 in profit. That's pretty good. In 30 minutes, that's...
Let's just pollute all the water and kill all the bees.
Oh my fucking god! I'm not killing anything that's not worth killing. I promise you, all of the chemicals only kill the bad things. Grubs. I'm
sure that's what they said about DDT.
That's what the farmers say all the time.
The kids used to jump through the DDT because it would evaporate quickly, so it would cool you off. So they used to run sprinklers of DDT when it first came out, and kids would run through it to cool down. Yeah. So I would argue against not killing any of the bad things. Yeah, as much as I hate them, even like ticks provide a pretty critical environmental aspect of it.
And that's the thing. Like we have the EPA breathing down our back whenever something new comes out. So like the EPA has its hands in it, and the EPA is worse than the IRS as far as government-sanctioned mafias go. Like the EPA, I used to have a buddy who had a creek running through his backyard.
Yeah.
He had a pet duck, one singular pet duck, which was a house duck. The duck lived in the fucking house. The EPA came out when they were doing surveying, and he had his duck in a kiddie pool on his deck. They slammed him for like an $800 fine because he owned a duck who was potentially polluting the freshwater creek that was running through the back of his property.
Oof.
And it's like, this is out in Nate. You don't think ducks are upstream shitting in it right now? Like, no, but they slammed him for having $800, one duck.
Yeah. I guess one of the points I wanted to get to that kind of goes into it is I don't really think automation is as large of a threat as people make it out to be. I think it is a threat, but I think it's been overblown. I think really what its best function is as a threat. In that, if the working class always kind of has this stick over their head, like, hey, just be thankful that you still have a job. It's cheaper to replace you with a machine. Well, then, they kind of become more complacent. Maybe I'm leaking my politics into it a little bit too much at this point.
I know what you're saying.
Please
I
keep
don't disagree at all.
Please keep
Yeah.
leaking your politics into it.
The point of it is, like, even with something like what you were talking about with a machine that just cuts lawn, at what point is it going to have, you know, a calibrated level in it? How about, do you need to know the relative humidity around it? Will that affect its operation? Do you need to put an RH sensor in it? Like, okay, do you need to know temperature? Do you need to know barometric pressure? Like, once you start making something very complex, it becomes exponentially more expensive to not only create but to maintain, because a lot more of those components start to break. They need to be replaced. They need to be replaced a lot of times with OEM parts because manufacturer wants to stick you for as much money as you can get, and they software lock it. It's pretty industry standard for things. And what I'm getting at is that a lot of these companies that would buy from these OEMs that would automate things are not actually going to do it because it is too cost prohibitive. And even like there just isn't a way to, there's a certain point where you can't get it to be any cheaper.
Yeah.
And I think they could probably get machines to be cheaper than human labor for some things, but definitely not for all things. Like, I think the main threat is data analytics, that going away. A lot of like mid-level desk positions really being thrown away when it comes to AI.
You too.
Yeah, that's us.
Okay.
Yeah. And like, I get what you're saying when like they're using it as the stick, but I almost think we should be using it as the carrot and be promoting this automation. Because like, I don't know if you've listened to all the previous episodes, but I'm very much on the end of like, we should try to automate everyone's jobs.
I would agree with you in a perfect world.
Our goal should be to have no one working that doesn't want to work.
See, but I know you don't watch Star Trek. That's like that to me, that's like, you know, a Star Trek episode where, you know, the best of our science has been put forward to like solve the world's issues. Like, of course, we probably could work as a nation to automate a lot of our tasks and save a lot of capital that is being wasted on labor, and it could be put right back into a program where what was that thing where everybody gets
universal
paid?
Basic Income,
like UBI or something. But is that actually going to happen? No,
I
not
know,
really.
It makes me sad.
I know. And it's a lot of like, it's a reason why it will always stay a threat, because in my opinion, if I was a ruthless psychopath CEO, why would I want to pay money to marginally reduce my labor cost and force my competitors to do the same, which causes a shift in a system, which would mean I would have to start paying more taxes when I barely pay any right now in order to have workers who are no longer working doing the menial tasks I'm giving them that I can make a robot do, just sit home and get paid UBI.
Yeah, and a lot of what I've heard against that point is that you would have to get every single company across the globe to agree with that, because as soon as one company decides to automate and has lower overhead because of it, they can push everybody else out if they don't adapt.
I disagree with that, because it's another perfect world scenario where if the most efficient person in the market was the top dog, then the market would look very different. You know, I'll bring it back to the stock market. If supply and demand was never manipulated, then yeah, if price discovery wasn't a thing, why would you buy an individual stock? I mean, because you already know what it's worth. Like, I guess what I'm trying to get at is companies play dirty, and even just in my field, not that I'm making any claims against anyone, I just want to make that clear, but I have heard, I've even seen pictures on, I think Goldman Sachs has a really good picture of a PowerPoint where it's like, curing cancer, is it profitable? ? I've heard of companies who go in and will find a lab or something where they have the potential, it looks like the drug has the potential to cure a very specific type of cancer, and it's more profitable to treat it than it is to cure it, so buy it and lop it off. That's how things work. I think that's how it would work with automation. I think you would see one company start to do that and start to take its market share, and lobbying and the rest of the companies gang up and basically destroy it.
So we'd have to get the government on our side.
That would never happen. I think what you would
sanction
you would need
people who don't automate.
You would basically just need, like, I guess, a couple of them at once happening where it's like not an effective solution. Because they would try and basically, I'm getting into like There's a lot higher level
This is
than
like
I meant
future
to.
politics at
Yeah.
this point.
but I mean, in my opinion, like if one industry wanted to automate, or if one industry didn't want to automate, and you have one person go forward with their company and try it, they could get strangled out. But if you had like a decent chunk of that market, like let's say 20%, try to automate, it would be significantly more difficult to get rid of them because you'd have to now strangle out 20% of the market at once.
So if public sentiment shifts enough,
Yeah.
we could potentially see, because like that's another movement I'm seeing amongst the younger generation is like the anti-work movement, and like
Why? Because no one wants to work?
yeah.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on that. I'm all for not working, guys.
Yeah, I'm all for not working too. Too bad it doesn't fucking work.
It does.
But it can.
I argue it
Be
already.
a dreamer, Gary.
I argue
It drives me
is.
fucking insane.
So right now, people have been underpaid for a very long time, and they're starting to realize that. I mean, it's, time can grind a mountain down to sand. So I think that's what you're starting to see is just this wages stagnating for so many years that people are just like, fuck it, I'll sit at home in poverty. What are you going to do? Bring me back to a wage slave job, desk job?
The problem also is, though, it's also killing small businesses. Like, really bad,
Okay.
because we've...
Corporations
So
are
to-
killing small businesses.
So to bring it back a little
Yeah.
bit before we go over the deep end,
Yeah,
right?
because this is a very
Right.
touchy
Dive,
subject
dive,
for
dive.
me.
To get to your point, I think it's probably the focus of automation is kind of what we were saying is jobs like ours that are somewhat skilled, but so the labor costs are still pretty high there, but could probably fairly easily be automated because a lot of it's like computing, software, AI, that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
rather than physical operation like manual jobs and stuff. Like, yeah, you could automate it, but like you said, if you have a machine with 100,000 moving parts or something.
Yeah, and let's
Whereas
talk about
we would
the
get
maintenance.
automated by a computer program.
True, but I think that there's an in-between step you're not thinking about, which is, you have your major corporations, conglomerates, whatever, picking up that software and basically cutting all those people that they would replace. But then you have another tier of industry that doesn't have the ability to, like, they can't afford it at that point in time.
Like the mid-level.
Yes. And what you would probably see is, a basic disparity between supply and demand, because you have a lot of people entering the workforce from just getting fired because of some automation. And then you'd have basically this small band of the industry that can't afford that automation, but can't afford labor. And they'd basically be flooded by supply, and then they would just, ratchet down
the price. So yeah,
yeah. So I mean, it's not a great in between step, but the jobs would still be there, is what I'm trying to say. But then the next step is like,
Yeah, and like this is definitely something that's happening too, because like
I agree.
there's a lot of people that their job is to sit in a room at a business, collect data about everybody who's working there and how they're doing their jobs, and automate as many people as they can.
Yeah.
Like that is a field of work right now.
Even just walk into McDonald's, like it used to be they had a bunch of people taking your orders, and now it's like 3 or 4.
And they have kiosks.
And they have kiosks to help support it.
Which
And they have the apps now. You can do all the that's what
Yep.
I've been doing.
And I'm kind of shocked that in the fast food field that shit hasn't been automated quicker, because like Sheetz and Wawa, that's been a thing for years. You could walk up to the kiosk in a Sheetz or a Wawa, order exactly what you want.
Well, the thing about that is that when it comes to Sheetz and Wawa, you have people sitting there waiting for their food. Once like the amount of people in that building builds up too much, like those simple kiosks are just not going to work. Like if Sheetz and Wawa were all about serving you food and all they used were kiosks, that'd be a different story. They're really kind of like this weird like convenience store that also sells sandwiches.
Yeah, because like
Yeah.
I've been in places like a Wawa where when the line backs up for the kiosks, it's slow because
Oh, yeah.
especially with something like you get someone who doesn't know what they're doing with it, or they don't know how to order.
And you need one lady who's like, I accidentally forgot mustard and it doesn't say it on my thing. Do I re-put it through? Do you cancel it? Do I have to go to the back of the line? Like, Yeah. So, I mean, that's...
At that point, just hand her a packet of mustard and tell her to fucking do it herself.
Well, you can if you're a robot.
That's the kind of robot I want taking my job, damn it. Here's your mustard lady. Go fucking fix it.
But again, it's not that you have to automate all 6 people working the sandwich thing. If you automate 4 and there's 2 people that do all the in-between stuff.
Yeah. I think that's a more realistic model of what you're going to see.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to get. It's not, automation isn't about eliminating ultimately it should be, but like right now you'll see a lot more of scaling back workforce than you will eliminating the need for work.
And it's funny that we're talking about automating in food, because I'm pretty sure before Quiznos died, does everyone here remember Quiznos?
I haven't heard the name Quiznos in like 10 years.
But
exactly. Quiznos is dead, and Subway killed them somehow. But they were looking at trying to automate the Subway sandwich industry. And it's just like, how do you do that? Like, they had
they already have
a conveyor belt
robots now.
They had a conveyor belt, but the whole reason that Quiznos died, like, amongst other reasons, was probably just because they couldn't figure out a way to automate it.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably some other business decisions.
Quiznos had a whole bunch of things wrong
marketing
with it.
And
I'd argue, like...
But their food was so good.
And I'd argue, like, a place like that could never go full automation either. Like, imagine, a food, like a restaurant that has no people in there. So, I mean, restaurants...
I think
they have those,
actually.
yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I know in Japan, it was last year, I think they were talking about, well, maybe not last year because of COVID, but they were talking about a burger shop where you put your order in the kiosk and it's all automated. Not like a single person. There's like one person that works there that stocks the machine. And
Japan's huge on automation.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they have entire stores that don't have employees.
Yeah.
See, that fascinates me because, like, at least here in America, when you go, like, the restaurant industry is a good one. Your margins are so thin. If you have a really bad month, you could go out of business. So... like, what happens when you have a really busy day in a really busy month when you make a lot of money that you would need to sustain yourself through the year and, like, one machine breaks and, like, you have to rush to get it fixed? It's like, how does that work?
Well, it's kind of the same as...
You're going to have a bunch of people who don't have jobs.
Well, it's kind of the same way as if you're really busy and your one employee just quits because... you've been a douche to them for like the last 6 months. Yeah. Like now you're fucked.
Or if you have a busy month and you're just short-staffed.
Hell, that's how I ended up getting one of my jobs at the restaurant. I used to only work when I used to work at the bar before it got turned into a goddamn fucking parking lot. I was a dish kid. I was getting paid $6.50 an hour. And I only worked 1 day a week. And I got a call the one night. I was like, and my boss told me, "Hey, Nick just quit. Can you come in?" I'm like, yeah. And Nick was the kid who worked like every day of the week. And he just straight up quit one night. And so this left this huge power vacuum because nobody had, like, no one was on the fucking list to work. So I just went in and I'm like, I will take all of his days. Fucking just give them all to me. And that's how I ended up becoming a chef, because I worked so much as a dish kid that I was able to actually work up, and I kind of just fucking shouldered all of my coworkers out of it because I'm like, no, I work more hours than you. I get to decide what happens. I basically became a manager by forcing everyone out of hours.
So to kind of recap, because we outlined a couple different scenarios that this automation way can go, right? We have the dreamer scenario where a bunch of things get automated. People have to work less and do the jobs that are left are less shitty in
fucking
theory.
Commies.
Right.
I think we're touching a nerve we might need to visit here with Gary.
Right. Another scenario is you get partial automation where you're losing, say, 30-40% of the workforce over like a 15-year period or something like that. That's kind of a weird scenario to me, because in my head I'm like, well, if tons of people are losing their jobs, who's there to buy all the shit that we can now automate and make? And how does that work?
And
right?
you know what makes it worse?
Why I think, I just want to say, that's why I think we'll never get to full automation, because that point isn't lost on all of the, like every corporation in America. Like, they sell things. And even like high-end level, like even like, in pharmaceuticals or medical devices, like even though your end user may need that service and you're like, insulin providers, yeah, they could make it $700 for a vial of insulin and you'll always have a customer. But once your customers literally don't have the money to do it, unless you to buy it, unless you bring that price down, they just die.
Yeah, and that's why I see a shift to full automation requiring giving up capitalism.
Yeah.
Like capitalism doesn't work with full automation because literally you don't have a system in which you have scarcity.
The free market will regulate itself.
But, it's a weird situation where like the more things that get automated, the more there's this like drag effect on the economy as a whole with the way things currently work. So that's kind of
because like what ideally you're at this like weird middle ground where like at the one end you have utopia, at the that's not a good word. I forget what a post-scarcity society, and what we're currently at, and in the middle is a potentially hellish landscape.
Yeah.
Well, you know what they say, right? You can get to utopia if you just kill off all the unhappy people in the world, right?
I like that plan.
And then just forget it ever happened.
I think they tried that in Libya, and I don't think it went well.
So, one thing we should also think about though is like it's not we're kind of speaking about it like there's like some kind of plan laid out, and we're like, how are they going to do it? I don't know if you've ever seen the GIF of there's like a lady with a crate of bananas and a shit ton of monkeys in India. And she drops the crate down and all the monkeys just like ripping out, they're grabbing bananas, and there's like a fucking pile of monkeys ripping all these bananas. I think that's what's happening with automation, where it's like, yeah. Basically, like, you know, there should probably be a very well thought out plan into how this is implemented cross industry. But what's actually happening is like, let's try and do this and grab as much money as we can by cutting out our low-end workers. And then towards the back end is when we're not going to be monkeys grabbing at bananas, when we're like, oh shit, if nobody works, then there's no money. You know? Yeah,
that's under our current system.
Under our current system.
Yeah. I don't know. And then there's always the prevailing, or I don't know, historical anecdotal theory where it's like, well, if you remove workers from certain industries because you're automating them, where there's new technology that kills old industries, or whatever is doing that, then in theory you open the door for room to create new jobs or different things.
Yeah, I am not a subscriber to that.
I also don't think.
I don't really either, but something that was pointed out to me at some point when I was delving into this stuff is that there's a lot of I don't want to call them humanitarian jobs because that they don't necessarily do good, but they're human-oriented jobs. Like, you have things like art, you have services, you have like psychology, and like you have a whole lot of different things that are not really automatable right now, or there's more value in having people do it than robots. Like you get those to me, weirdos that will pay more for something that's handmade by a real person rather, like.
I think I get what you're saying.
There's like niche industries like that can,
like the podcast,
potentially. Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say like military service.
Oh, geez.
Why? What's wrong with automating that? I think we could probably bring AI somehow.
But the point is
you are being liberated. Please do not resist.
Or the old person that when they go grocery shopping likes to talk to the cashier.
Listen, God damn it!
We could just have a robot that talks to them as if it was a person.
Yeah, what I'm trying to get at is like,
and some people will want to work too.
Where there's like people would prefer humans be doing something than not. Whether it makes any kind of sense to or not.
And that's a huge part of my market too. A lot of people who I mow their grass. Well, I mean, I mow your guys' grass. When I get around to it, it's really tall. And I don't know why.
Grass goes fast here.
Yeah. Well, are you fucking spreading cow shit on it? Like, what's going on? Anyway,
we're spreading Aggie shit on it.
Yeah. So, like, a lot of the people I mow grass for, the vast majority of them are senior citizens. And if, like, someone came up to him then, like, hey, those two nice kids that you're paying to mow their grass? Yeah, we want to put a robot in to fucking replace them. They're going to be like, my favorite days are when they come and talk to me.
Yeah, but then we'll have jobs where people just go to people's houses and talk to them.
That's weird.
We can have like a talk to the elderly.
That's what worries me about automation, because I like my boring, repetitive tasks that don't involve me talking to other people much.
And when you were talking about art, like how it can't be automated, bullshit.
No, that's not what he was saying. He said people prefer art that's made by humans.
Art and entertainment. Like, you could do a CGI movie or an animated movie, and that's cool and works for a lot of things, but a lot of people like movies that are people and actors and, all the special effects stuff.
I agree with that. I just don't know how you would, for some art, how you would even differentiate between the two.
Well, also, I kind of...
You would just market it as...
Yeah.
It's a completely psychological thing. Yeah.
This is a topic for another day, but I really wanted to talk about this. Has anyone noticed the degradation of art in the last, 20 years?
I think you're just getting cranky old man
Hold on,
syndrome.
no, time out.
We're over an hour.
Before we end the episode, I'm going to talk about this, and you cannot fucking stop me. Invisible sculpture sold for $18,000, and it's just tape on the ground!
All that tells me is rich people have too much money.
It drives me nuts.
No, that's not actually degradation of art. What that is called is
stupidity?
No, it's a tax write-off. Yes. So we can go into it later if we ever want to go into investments, but the banana staple to the wall.
That's all for $25,000?
Yeah, because that money is locked into that art, and if one rich person says it's worth this much and that art community says it's worth that much, it's insulated from an economic crash, for example. It's another way of diverting your funds to a certain thing. It's not actually the degradation of physical art.
Rich people are too rich.
Yes, it drives me nuts. Especially because I like art, but we're out of time for today.
Gary's all pro-rich person and anti-working class.
No, dude, I like art. I like old school art, like Renaissance art, because I took a couple classes on it when I was in college. And it's beautiful.
You just like pictures of knights fighting snails.
Dragons. Your fucking point.
I like people charging windmills. Thank you very much.
Alrighty. Well, I think we're out of time before I fly even more off the handle. So,
Gary loves rich people.
Besides, so if automation takes my job, I can fulfill my dream job passionately of protesting full time. Hi, Gary. How was your day?
God damn it.
It was good. How are you, Aaron?
What's the weather like over there?
Well, since I'm not under the nuclear lamp, pretty good.
I'm sorry.
Neither am I anymore. There's one right outside. Yeah, literally right outside the blanket.
So it works.
Yeah, you did ask.
I would say the mic works. Yes.
I had to check it.
What?
That's got to stay in now.